Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today I will be building Battleship Arizona in 700 scale. This is a challenging build because not only I need to fix all the issues of the kit, but also adding a bunch of details including photo etch parts, DIY details from plastic sheets, and 3D printed parts. I will also show you the painting and weathering applied to this model. But before that, let's quickly talk about the kit from HobbyBoss. It is a horrible kit to start with. It has bad fit all over the place. It has terrible details for railing, windows, and walls. But don't worry, all these issues will be addressed in this video. Immediately, I start to remove plastic details on the deck. I will be replacing this portion with photo etch parts or DIY details from plastic sheets. They can be easily removed by a model nipper, but do leave some space to prevent damaging the parts underneath. The remainings can be trimmed by penknife and sandpapers to have a smooth surface. There are a lot of details to be removed off the deck, but with a bit of patience, this is not a major challenge. The bridge is in a similar situation as the deck, where all the walls need to be removed. Some parts are too small to use a nipper, so I use my push brush instead. The sanding needs some extra care here not to damage the surrounding parts. For that, I'm using my special shaped sanding plate together with sponge sandpaper. As you can see, I was able to sand just the areas I need. The mast needs to be modified in the same manner. I won't go through the procedure again because it's the same as the deck and the bridge. Moving on to the funnel, I need to create an opening on the exhaust to leave space for PE parts. I start by drilling several holes around the edge of the openings, and then join these holes with penknife and push brush. This method works well when creating openings on other parts, such as staircases on the deck. Finally, we got a crane for lifeboats. I'm cutting away the arms to replace with PE parts. The middle portion can also be trimmed down because it is a mini platform with railing according to the reference photo. Now is the time to glue the bottom of the ship as well as the bow deck to the hull. I'm using Tamiya cement for the hull and extra thin cement for the deck. Clips are handy here to press the parts firmly together while the glue is curing. It is important to have a solid structure here because a loose connection could easily open cracks on the surface after painting. As you can see, there are huge misalignments and gaps around the joints. If the gap is small, using toothpaste putty or sometimes super glue is more than enough. But this time, the fit is so bad, even after this step, the misalignment is easily visible. So I decided to cover the surface with epoxy putty. This means I need to spend more time sanding off the excess putty, but let's leave that for later. While the putty is drying, I take the time to drill out windows along the hull. Originally, these windows stick out like rivets, which look totally different compared to the reference photo. So I remove all of them with push brush and drill holes using 0.5mm drill bits. I don't know what's the actual size of these windows, but I thought 0.5mm translates to 35 cm in original scale, so the number probably makes sense. Since we have drill bits, I also work on a turret to open mounting holes for metal gun barrels. Battleship Arizona's main gun uses coaxial design, so I try to have the holes aligned horizontally so the main guns fall in the same horizontal plane. Now the putty has dried, I sand the surface with number 600 sandpaper, followed by 800 and 1000 to make it smooth. Although it looks very patched up at this moment, but we finally solved all the misalignments and gaps around the body. At this stage, we managed to address all the issues come with the kit. We can finally start to work on the more interesting steps, which is DIY details from plastic sheets. I spent 36 hours fixing all these issues, which gives you an idea what a bad kit could have cost you. I start by making the walls below mid-deck using 0.3mm thick plastic sheets. I measure the length of each section against the parts and label the locations of windows according to the diagram I found online. I then drill the windows and cut into multiple pieces before gluing them to the deck. Those gaps between the walls are mounting locations for Arizona's 5-inch secondary guns. The upper and lower walls are made by 0.1mm thick plastic sheets because it's easier to bend into shape. This paper-like plastic sheet has many other use cases on 700 scale models because it translates to only 7 cm in original scale. For supporting structures like the mounting for second and third turret, they are made by cutting the plastic sheets into thin strips and glued with extra thin cement. I use this technique to make all other supporting structures for the bridge and the mast. This is a small platform sticking out to the side along the secondaries, which is missed out by the kit, so I measured and cut it out using the 0.1mm plastic sheet. Those triangular supporting structures along the hull, as well as under the platforms, are made by the same plastic sheets by cutting the strip into small pieces. The conning tower is too low and observation windows are missed out by the kit. I used 2 layers of 0.3mm plastic sheets to increase the height of it. The middle layer has multiple cutouts, so that when glued together, they served as the observation window. All the walls for the bridge are made by the same technique as the wall of the middeck. I hope you can see the difference if we compare the bridge assembly before and after DIY plastic sheet. For the funnel, I'm scraping some welding lines with my scraping blade. These lines might not be immediately visible until we apply panel lining after the painting procedure. The supporting structure under the platform is also made by the same technique using 0.1mm plastic sheet, so I won't go into details here. For the observation post on top of 2 masts, I used 0.1mm plastic sheet to create their walls, which we removed previously. A vise is really helpful here to secure the parts in place while gluing. With the walls completed, I glue the parts together and start to work on the windows. The windows are in rectangular shape, so instead of cutting openings which could damage the parts, I use small strips to make window frame on top. This is not as neat as I expected, but it's the best I can do without photo etch parts. But overall, I think both masts after modification looks better than their original form. I'm replacing the main gun barrels with these metal ones I bought together with the kit. After that, I use epoxy putty to create blast bags for each of them. I managed to find some aftermarket 3D printed parts for the secondary guns, anti-air battery, and lifeboats. They have much better details and definitely saved me a lot of time. Usually I will assemble parts after painting, but I'm gluing the secondaries and middeck right now because the middeck is raised by the walls and there are gaps to be filled below. Again, it's a gap about 1mm wide, so I used epoxy putty followed by toothpaste putty as well as more sandings to fill up the gap. Well, that's a lot of modifications already, but we're not done yet, because there are all these photo etch parts to work on. I chose the PE set from BigBlueBoy for Arizona. This is not a super detailed set, so I add on some general PEs for railing and ladders from different brands. When taking out the PE parts, I use a glass cutting mat to prevent bending the parts, which tend to happen on a normal cutting mat. I will take out multiple parts in one batch and clean them up. This will save me some time from switching between tools too frequently. There will be remaining nubs on the PE parts, but they can be easily removed by metal files. Just be patient and gentle in this step, otherwise you may destroy the parts. Some PE parts will require folding or bending before they can be glued together. For those with long folding edge, I use vise to hold the parts along the folding line. It works well for parts that are more fragile. Some parts require bending, and this time I'm using a multi-segment cord reel which has different radius in one place. It is not necessary to have this tool if you can find metal rods in different diameters. As for the ladders, you can use a plier to hold it and a tweezer to flip the steps. Now it's time to glue some PE parts in place. I use a gel tap CA to temporarily hold the parts and use normal CA to secure them in place. Here, I'm gluing clamps on the side of the hull. The PE comes with masking tape for me to label locations for the installation. I drill a shallow hole for each location, which helps to secure the parts better. I borrow the wooden deck, which I will install much later to help locating all the shields for anti-air batteries. I like to install the railings at this stage because it is easier to paint them together with the hull. After all the PE parts are installed, it is important to put the ship together again to check for any interference. This is the last opportunity to make major adjustments because after painting, the cost of rework is much higher. I think ship model has a special appearance in this form with a mixture of plastic grey and shiny brass, so I always take some photos at this stage. Up to this point, I have spent close to 140 hours on this build, and it's time for painting. The color for Arizona during Pearl Harbor attack is a bit controversial, with possibility between dark grey, ocean blue, and navy blue. Some posts on Reddit says she could be in the middle of repainting, which makes sense since repair ship Vestal was at her port at the time. For this build, I decided to follow scheme 1 and choose dark grey as the main color. But feel free to choose navy blue if you would like to follow painting diagram for this kit. For structure above the final line, I use off-white and glossy red for turret roof. Overall, I'm happy with the paint job this time. Of course, there will always be some areas better off by brush painting, such as the blast backs of the main gun and upper structure of motorboats. When painting is done, we can finally put the ship together. The first thing to install is the wooden deck, because otherwise you won't be able to do so. There isn't too much challenges at this stage. Just be gentle and watch all your efforts so far slowly come together in front of you. But there are a few more steps before declaring completion. First, we need to put on decals with the help of Tamiya's decal setter, and followed by a layer of glossy super clear to protect the paint and decal from weathering procedure. I'll be using 3 different colors for weathering, starting with multi-black. Multi-black is to highlight edges of details. I first apply a layer which is diluted in 1:2 ratios across the details, and then apply a wash using purely the solvent to blend out the edges and correct anywhere appears to be too dirty. There is a secondary purpose of multi-black, which is to create some shading effect along the hull to make the large surfaces a bit more dynamic. The second color I use is multi-white for the salty effect on the hull after being in seawater for too long. I apply a layer of multi-white which is diluted in a 1:2 ratio. After that is dry, I will remove the excessive with cotton swab dipped with solvent. The third color is stained brown, which I apply to locations which are more likely to have corrosions, for example the anchors and along the waterline. This is more to apply a layer of filter instead of the actual corrosion marks, which I will use oil paint to create. Oil paints are much thicker and take longer to dry, which give us plenty of room for adjustment. I start by dipping oil paint below the anchors, windows, drain pipes, and then use brush paint with a little bit of solvent to spread the paint downwards. You don't need a lot of solvent here, otherwise you could wash the paint away completely. After weathering is complete, I start to add riggings to the ship. I use two types of rigging wires, the metal wires for shorter rigging around the bridge, and the stretchable rubber wires for longer riggings. The last step is to put on naval jacks as well as the national flags, which are made of decal on the aluminum foil. And with that, we finished building Battleship Arizona in 700 scales. We started from an awful kit, but with all the reference pictures I found, together with massive modifications and 160 hours of effort, I would say I'm happy with the look of this model. For those who watch until here, I would like to say thank you for following through my journey of this build. I appreciate if you can give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. All the while, I have been working on USS Vestal in parallel, so the video for her should be available in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care and I will see you soon.